Hey everyone, my name is Zain Asri, and my oral history project was an interview with my grandfather, who was in the U.S. Army Reserves during the Vietnam. He never was deployed, he never saw combat, but he did get to travel. Uh, he was a combat engineer during his time in the military, and he also eventually became a nuclear weapons technician, which is pretty cool. Um, but anyways, for those that are considering an oral history project, make sure to do your research and make sure that you have good questions. Like, those are two of the most probably important things that you can do when you have an interview, because with the adequate research, you can you can provide information uh, to the interviewer, or whatever, and you're already informed about about that topic. And having good questions is almost like an absolute, because you really need to kind of flesh out their story and their narrative and hear that. So those are, piece of advice that I would give to somebody who's considering oral history, as a project. Anyways, so my grandfather never saw combat. And I know it's odd because usually interviews are with people that have seen combat, but I think it's also important to have those people that have not seen combat, just to get their viewpoint of the conflict outside of the battlefield. And Vietnam War being the one of the most controversial conflicts the United States has been in. um, I know I asked some questions regarding about how did you view the conflict outside of combat. But one of the cool things that I found during the interview, which my grandpa loves to tell stories. I've heard a lot of stuff that he's done. But one thing I never knew is that he mentioned, so General Patton of World War II, his son, my grandfather actually met him, which, like I said, I didn't know before the interview, and that was a pretty fascinating detail. But yeah, it's important to hear those voices that may not be heard mostly, just because they weren't part of a big event or stuff like that. I know I've talked about in this class that it is important for historians to look at those voices that are not heard, because it gives another aspect to a conflict or event that may not that may not be mainstream. So, anyways, that was my interview. It was great. And bye, guys.